Okay, so you want to own a private security empire. You want the armored Suburbans, the earpieces, the ex-Navy SEALs on payroll, and the quiet prestige of commanding your own personal secret service. But here is the strange part about the business of private protection. Deploying former Tier 1 operators to guard billionaires isn't a business of violence. It is a business of liability, where a single discharged weapon can bankrupt your entire organization overnight. By the end of this video, you will know exactly how the profit margin on human life is calculated, why the world's most elite bodyguards are fundamentally just high-end logisticians with guns, and the specific legal loophole that allows private citizens to command small, heavily armed standing armies across state lines. The first invoice to enter this world depends entirely on your appetite for scale. At the entry level, you can acquire a boutique executive protection, or EP, firm for around $4 million. For that money, you get a handful of aging Chevy Suburbans, a Rolodex of local corporate clients, and a roster of retired police officers working as independent contractors. Move up to the mid-tier, and a regional player with a dedicated cyber intelligence wing and permanent estate security contracts will cost you closer to $50 million. And if you want to buy a transnational Leviathan, a dominant cartel player like Allied Universal or Gardaworld, managing tens of thousands of armed guards and international logistics, you are looking at an acquisition cost well north of $5 billion. Let's anchor on that $50 million mid-tier firm. That same $50 million sitting in a standard index fund would throw off roughly $2.5 million a year in pure, sleep-easy, untaxed until sold capital gains. Instead, you are choosing to buy a payroll of traumatized combat veterans and a massive, ticking time bomb of legal exposure. Why would anyone do that? Because the acquisition price is just the down payment. The second invoice is what actually dictates survival in this industry, and it arrives with zero warning. But the personnel are just the start. The hidden costs of owning a security firm will bleed you dry before your agents ever draw a weapon. First, there is the insurance stack. You are not buying standard general liability. You are absorbing armed liability, error and omissions, and kidnap and ransom underwriting that can easily exceed $3 million a year in premiums alone. Then comes the compliance architecture. Operating a private security firm means navigating a labyrinth of local licensing across 50 different states, plus international traffic in arms regulations, or ITAR, if you ever plan to move tactical equipment across a border. And then, there is the invisible staff. When people think of a security firm, they think of the shooter standing next to the billionaire. They don't think of the Global Security Operations Center. To run a legitimate mid-tier firm, you need a GSOC, a dark, climate-controlled room in Virginia or Texas, staffed 24/7 by former military intelligence analysts tracking flight paths, weather patterns, and social media sentiment. You are paying 15 analysts $120,000 a year to stare at screens so your agent on the ground knows which exit door is compromised before the principal even arrives. Add it up. You are burning $35,000 a day just to keep the lights on, the servers running, and the weapons licensed, before a single client pays a retainer invoice. Does that sound like a fun business to run? Now we get to the question that actually matters. Where does the money come from? Myth: you get rich charging $1,500 a day for a bodyguard. Reality: the human meat shield is a loss leader. The profit is in the data, the intelligence, and the structural infrastructure of the client's life. Imagine you and I run a luxury hotel. Renting the room pays the mortgage, but it's a grind. Now I change one rule. I charge you a massive monthly subscription just to exist in the hotel's database, and if you ever actually need to stay in the room, you pay double the nightly rate on top of it. That is the retainer model of executive protection. A high net worth client doesn't pay a daily rate. They pay a $250,000 annual retainer just to have your firm on speed dial. If they travel, they pay operational expenses and day rates on top of that. But the wealth preservation mechanics go much deeper. Wealthy families use security firms to shield liability. By outsourcing their protection to your firm, they transfer the legal risk of a violent encounter off their personal balance sheet and onto yours. And in exchange, they grant you absolute proximity to their lives. This creates the ownership flywheel. You acquire a boutique EP firm. That firm grants you intimate, unimpeachable access to the world's wealthiest families and their deepest vulnerabilities. You map those vulnerabilities to upsell them on cybersecurity, encrypted communications, and physical estate architecture. Your firm becomes the trusted gatekeeper to elite capital, filtering who gets near the principal. You then leverage those relationships and that proximity to fund your next massive business acquisition. The security firm isn't the destination. It is the ultimate networking tool. The real money isn't in guarding the principal. It's in guarding their secrets. Every one of these mechanisms will look completely different as AI threat modeling takes over the industry. If you are the kind of person who wants to track that shift as it happens, make sure you are subscribed for the second half of this breakdown. Because there is a massive legal advantage built into this model. Wait, that's legal? Yes. It's called LEOSA, the Law Enforcement Officers Safety Act. Federal Law 18 U.S.C. Section 926C allows qualified active and retired law enforcement officers to carry concealed firearms in almost any jurisdiction in the United States, aggressively bypassing strict state and local gun control laws. Private security firms don't just hire retired cops for their experience. They hire them to exploit this federal exemption. You are effectively renting their LEOSA status to legally move armed men through jurisdictions where a normal private citizen would be arrested on the spot. Because here is what nobody tells you about buying a private security firm. You are not buying a roster of bodyguards. You are buying a stack. You are buying lethal capacity. You are buying plausible deniability. You are buying intelligence gathering. You are buying logistical friction removal. And you are buying absolute, unimpeachable access. When a billionaire hires your firm, they are not buying safety. They are buying the logistical friction removal. The ability to walk from a private jet to a boardroom without interacting with the unpredictable public. But as the owner of the firm, the only layer of that stack you actually care about is the access. To maintain that access, the architecture of the business must be flawless. Physically, the operation is designed around redundancy. Your armored vehicle fleet must be rotated constantly. A $200,000 modified Suburban depreciates to zero the moment its suspension fails under the weight of ballistic steel. Behaviorally, the architecture is far more subtle. The entire industry relies on the psychology of engineered dependence. The goal of a high-end security detail is to make the principal feel perfectly accommodated, but perpetually slightly unsafe without you. The agents use industry terminology like advance work, arriving days early to map choke points and hospitals, to constantly remind the client of the theoretical threats lurking outside their bubble. Data is the final architectural layer. Your GSOC tracks every movement, every preferred restaurant, every medical condition of the client. This data isn't just for protection. It is the ultimate lifestyle management CRM, allowing you to upsell adjacent services and embed your firm so deeply into the family office that firing you becomes logistically impossible. Every camera, every threat matrix, every armored door in this business exists to maximize one of those four numbers. To understand how this actually plays out, look at the two men who defined the modern industry. In 1978, a young man named Gavin DeBecker started a firm guarding Hollywood celebrities like Elizabeth Taylor. But DeBecker realized quickly that fighting was a failure of logistics. He didn't build an empire by training shooters. He built it by predicting violence. He developed Mosaic, a threat assessment system that quantified the likelihood of an attack. He turned a blue-collar bodyguard gig into a multi-hundred-million-dollar intelligence apparatus. Today, Gavin DeBecker and Associates is the gold standard for Silicon Valley billionaires and government officials alike. He used the asset to build unassailable prestige and wealth. Contrast that with Eric Prince. Prince took his inheritance and founded Blackwater in 1997, aiming to build a private military for the US government. For a decade, it was a wildly lucrative cash flow machine, securing billions in federal contracts during the War on Terror. But then came the pivot point. On September 16, 2007, Blackwater contractors opened fire in Nissa Square in Baghdad. 17 Iraqi civilians were killed. The ensuing catastrophic fallout destroyed the company's brand. Prince wanted a private military. DeBecker wanted an intelligence agency. Prince got congressional hearings, endless lawsuits, and eventual exile from the industry he created, while De Becker got the keys to the world's most elite boardrooms. Eric Prince lost his premier company but kept his wealth, pivoting to new geopolitical frontiers. Would you have absorbed the public stigma of being labeled a mercenary operator for a billion-dollar exit? Or is the reputational damage too high a price to pay? But the private security industry does have one real problem. The structural weakness of this business is the rogue operator. You are relying on an employee making $90,000 a year to make a split-second, legally perfect decision with a firearm, while sleep-deprived and operating in a chaotic environment. Historically, this exact asymmetrical risk has destroyed massive firms. Look at the collapse of Armour Group's reputation in Kabul in 2009, where systemic hazing and severe operational failures led to congressional investigations and the loss of critical embassy contracts. The failure modes always come down to two mistakes. Mistake 1. Hiring purely for tactical combat experience rather than emotional intelligence and restraint. Mistake 2. Underinsuring the reputational damage of a single public failure. A security firm's only real product is trust. The moment an agent acts recklessly on camera, the cartel of elite clients will drop you in unison. This structural fragility is still the dominant force in the industry today, which is exactly why a meaningful share of billionaires deliberately avoid owning these firms, even though they could easily buy one outright. Why absorb the massive, unpredictable liability of a standing private army? If a guard makes a mistake, the owner of the firm gets sued into oblivion. Instead, the ultra-wealthy simply retain the best firms on the market. They outsource the liability, leveraging the exact same protection without ever touching the toxic legal exposure of ownership. Let's look at the real numbers. Scenario 1. The prestige roll-up. Starting cost to acquire a premium mid-market firm, $40 million. Annual revenue from 50 ultra-high net worth retainers and corporate contracts, $65 million. Annual operating costs, payroll, and insurance, $52 million. Net profit, $13 million. Payback period, just over 3 years. You are running a dominant, cash-flowing machine that grants you access to the most powerful people on Earth. Scenario TWO, the catastrophic discharge. You buy the same firm. 6 months in, one of your agents discharges a weapon during a chaotic paparazzi scramble outside a nightclub in Los Angeles. A bystander is injured. The client is sued. Your firm is sued. Your armed liability insurance premiums spike 400% overnight. Fearing public relations blowback, 15 of your top corporate clients trigger the morals clause in their contracts and drop you. Revenue plummets to $35 million. Legal and operational costs spike to $60 million. You are instantly bleeding $25 million a year, trapped in litigation, and your equity is effectively worthless. The difference between being a shadow powerbroker and facing corporate bankruptcy is one trigger pull by an exhausted employee. And yes, that was still the optimistic scenario, because the bystander survived. Remember that $50 million sitting in the index fund? The opportunity cost of this business is staggering. You could have done absolutely nothing and made millions. So how do you actually get out? Owners of successful security firms eventually realize value through a massive private equity roll-up. The industry is highly fragmented, and giants like Allied Universal are constantly acquiring mid-tier firms to absorb their client lists and eliminate competition. You build the boutique, secure the elite clients, and sell the entire apparatus to a conglomerate for a 10x multiple. Because ultimately, what is the wealthy owner really buying? The object is rarely the investment. The mechanism is. You are not buying a security company. You are buying the ultimate VIP access pass to the world's elite. You are buying the right to sit in the room while billionaires, politicians, and CEOs discuss their deepest fears and most sensitive negotiations, because you are the one holding the door closed. The paradox of the private security empire is that you spend a fortune to protect other people, purely to gain access to their capital. If you build the architecture perfectly, you become the indispensable ghost in the machine of global wealth. Just ask Steve Jones, the CEO of Allied Universal, who engineered a roll-up strategy to create a $20 billion global security behemoth. There is a completely hidden set of rules that dictate how the ultra-wealthy protect their lives, and we are exposing the financial engineering behind their other assets next. If you want to be watching when we do, make sure you are here. The real power is never the person holding the gun. It is the person holding the contract.